morning, folks. Welcome. Happy to have you all here for Sunday Forum today. This is the second part in a two-parter as we explore together a variety of different types of dementia, not just Alzheimer's, but this reality that there's a variety of different types. It sets in slowly and gradually, as we learned last week. There's some wonderful new medical steps, again, that we learned from Dr. Greeley last week. And today we're turning towards sort of the personal stories and some connections as we talk with some people who are walking this journey, who have walked this journey as individuals with developing memory issues or as caregivers. So thank you so much for you all who are here speaking today, and I'm happy to turn it over to Hulda now. Thank you.
Morning. Good morning. Thanks for being here. I'm Hulda Bridgman. I'm going to read my notes because it's not quite as good a delivery, but it's going to be a lot faster, louder. Okay, a lot faster and smoother than if I'm extemporaneous. Last week, Dr. Greeley explained that dementia is an umbrella term for memory loss, which impairs in some way a person's ability to perform activities of daily living. Different types of dementia also have their own specific characteristics, but today I want to touch briefly on three areas which apply to all dementias. First of all, the journey of my husband Ken and me to find a diagnosis, in our case for Lewy body dementia. Then a few words about dementia grief, which differs from grief in other situations and which can have an effect even when it's not recognized. And third, I want to show you some resources which I've found helpful as a caregiver. About 80% of dementias are identified as Alzheimer's. Lewy body is the second most common type. Youngie and Norm will talk more about Lewy body, but I generally describe it as having the memory loss of Alzheimer's with the motor symptoms of Parkinson's, plus a few characteristics of its own. My husband Ken died of dementia with Lewy body about 3 years ago. For about 35 years, I had the feeling that something was going on, that he had no apparent memory loss, and dementia was not even on our radar. I used to say to the occasional professional we consulted, what is going on here? This is not normal. But dementia was not on their radar either. Ken's issues were subtle and involved executive function. On office work, he had trouble prioritizing and could only work at one speed, which was slow. So it could take him a long time to get things done. We tried different fixes. A speed reading course, different organizational aids and strategies, outside help with some tasks, but nothing made a difference for long. But he was smart, clever, very likable, and quiet. He compensated, and he managed okay. And on other things, like remodeling projects, he appeared to be the same skilled and clever person he'd always been. It hurts me now to imagine the stress he must have felt that he never articulated. He just kept plugging along. For years, I kept reading and researching, trying out different hypotheses, saying that before I die, I hope I find out what's going on here. Ken eventually became more inattentive and easily distracted. An example, I would start to talk to him. Halfway through the first sentence, he would point out the window and say, look, there's a bird. And I'd say, right, as I was saying, and I'd start again. Halfway through the sentence, look, there's another one. At that point, I usually said, you know, if there's an elephant on the yard, that would be something to tell me. Birds are not that unusual, and I'm trying to talk to you. He'd say, sorry. Get his attention, I'd start again. I finally decided there was nothing I wanted to say enough to try more than 3 times. So at that point, I would say, never mind, forget it. But without a diagnosis, or any thought the problem was neurological. It just seemed like really annoying behavior. And such incidents repeated over and over put a stress on a relationship. Once we got to this point, I finally decided that he must be ADD, attention deficit. So we saw a psychiatrist who sent us to a psychologist who did some testing, who told us that Ken was not ADD, but he did have memory loss. More testing by a neuropsychologist told us that he had MCI, mild cognitive impairment. This is a memory loss which is more than normal aging, but not as severe as a dementia. It doesn't necessarily lead to dementia, but it raises your risk. Eventually, Ken's memory loss became apparent. He had trouble finding his way around town, and as his functioning worsened, we assumed it was Alzheimer's because that's the most common dementia. He saw Dr. Greeley to be screened for the clinical trial being run for aducanumab. Ken didn't qualify for the trial, but when I mentioned the Parkinson-like motor symptoms he was showing, Dr. Greeley said, "It sounds like Lewy body." When I went home and looked it up online, it fit, even though the usual hallucinations weren't apparent. When you have a diagnosis, then you can begin to advocate effectively for your person. One example, one of Lewy body's unique features is a potentially dangerous reaction to certain drugs. So I kept a list of these in my purse. I showed the list to everyone in a position to order or administer drugs to Ken. Many people, including medical professionals, are not real familiar with Lewy body. And I found in every case they were open and interested and helpful in discussing what would be best with him. When Ken had 2 surgeries, I showed the list to both the surgeon and the anesthesiologist and discussed with the anesthesiologist what type of anesthesia would be best for him. Both times, I was invited to come to the recovery room as soon as he was awake, where I could lower his anxiety and aid in his communication with the nursing staff. I gradually realized that I had become Ken's link to the world, and that his considerable anxiety was related to the fear that he might have to solve a problem when I wasn't there. Takeaway from this is don't be afraid to pursue a diagnosis. Knowing what you're dealing with, I think, is always better. It helps in many ways. It saves you the stress of misunderstandings in relationships. It helps you become educated about your particular dementia, and you can make the necessary preparations, both legal and financial, and those are best made early on. It can help you access resources and possibly clinical trials at a point where they are most helpful. And therefore, it helps you maximize your best possible life going forward. Second thing I want to touch on is dementia grief. All grieving is individual, but dementia grief has unique characteristics which set it apart. I want to say a few brief things about it, mostly to alert you to the fact that it exists and give you a source for more information if you might find it useful. Our culture often doesn't recognize grief until a person has actually died. But in dementia, the grieving starts while the person is still with you, and it starts early. It may not be recognized as grief while you're consumed with caregiving tasks, and a great sense of relief when those tasks finally end may be confusing and make you feel a little guilty. In dementia, you lose the person gradually, over and over, while they're still physically present. You can't identify a moment when it actually happened. Dementia grief involves 4 kinds of loss. One is compounded loss of their abilities, memories, identifying traits, and the shared reality that you have with them. These can occur in succession over a short period of time, and they build up. They can weigh you down as they just seem to keep coming and piling on. Another type is anticipatory grief, where you anticipate significant intangible losses, a loss of companionship, of the skills and traits of the person, of what they contributed to the relationship and to your everyday life. There's also a disenfranchised grief, which is one not recognized by other people. The compounded and anticipatory losses of dementia may be subtle and ambiguous, not easily recognized as loss by others who have not dealt personally with the disease. They may feel you still have the companionship of your person because they're still physically present. That's why it's important to have contact with people who actually share your experience. Sharing with others who understand and share your situation is critical. I want to make a note on caregiving. It is imperative to care for yourself. You need regular time away from caregiving every day, a few minutes here and there, every week, occasionally longer. Totally away, something that feeds you and helps you completely separate from caregiving. Caregiving is draining, and you have to replenish the well before it runs dry. I used to think of Ken and me as a unit where all the parts have to be sustainable for it to work. Lots of humor helps, a lot of it's black humor. Complaining, I'm a big fan of complaining. Complaining and laughing about the craziness with people who know what you're talking about is priceless. I used to say it's a good thing I'm an artist because artists work in alternate realities. And that's what we're living with at our house. There's also an ambiguous loss. It's a significant loss which lacks clarity, finality, and a normal sense of closure. Your person may be physically present but psychologically absent. Sometimes it's called a goodbye without leaving. In this situation, it can be very difficult to grieve and move forward. All of these losses and attendant grief form a kind of overlay to caregiving and its aftermath. The grieving may not be recognized while you're so busy, and afterwards when the caregiving burden has been lifted. But the unrecognized effect is worth keeping in mind as you deal with other issues in your life. For an expansion on these thoughts and more information on dealing with dementia grief, I'll refer you to a list of resources that I have. There's a website that's dealt with it. We just pass some of these back. It's over here. I'll give you a minute. There are some resources over here from the Alzheimer's Association. Please pick them up. They're really heavy. I'd be happy not to carry them home. There is a booklet there. I want to just highlight a couple of things which I find most useful. It's a book called Dementia Roadmap. I use this constantly all through our journey. It has a lot of basic information for each stage. Typically, dementia is talked about as early, middle, and late stage. But people can exhibit more than one stage, and it's going to go back and forth. But this will talk about each stage, what to expect, what you may be feeling, what you can do about it, what you should be doing at that point. It's a really marvelous resource. A very best resource, and Kathy Thornton put me onto this book. It's the Playbook for Alzheimer's Caregivers. Coach Bro is a football coach, and so he uses a football metaphor, but it's easy to ignore if you're not into football. I use this book constantly, and after Ken died, I gave all my materials to my neighbor whose wife has Alzheimer's. When I borrowed it back this week, he told me he reads it every week, and it comes with a little cheat sheet of tips and strategies. And inside, if you're desperate, you can find little tabs for late afternoon behavior, dressing, wandering, eating. The last one is called Survival Tips. And you flip it up and it will give you ideas for dealing with that particular issue. He told me that he had copied this for himself because he didn't want to be without it for the few days that I had his book. Wow. So it's valuable. The Alzheimer's Association has tremendous resources for all kinds of dementias. These materials are from them. They run seminars and they run support groups. It's worth getting on the mailing list for both the local one and the national one, and then you'll get notices about events and seminars and so forth. There is a local office, it's a one-person office, and she's usually in the field. So just give her a call and set up a time when you can meet her. But they have a couple of dozen or more brochures down there on all sorts of behaviors. And you can take a look at what's here and see what they do. Another thing I'll mention is the Staying Connected group. They do it about 4 times a year. When we did it, it was a 4-session class. It's for the caregiver and the person with the diagnosis. And there's actually a workbook for it. The idea is to help someone stay connected to their community and to their interests as they move through, particularly early stage. They'll probably run another one after the first of the year. So if you are in a position to take advantage, contact Kim at the Alzheimer's Association and let her know that you're interested. There are some more things about support groups. A lot of people find support groups helpful. I went to a lot of seminars that dealt with particular behaviors and how to deal with them. I'm not a groupie, so I was not really into support groups, but what was helpful for me was individual meeting. I had a couple of friends whose husbands had Lewy body and they were a little farther along. So we used to have lunch occasionally or coffee, just sit and talk. If you're into groups, there are groups that are good. If you're not, talking to someone is helpful. Some of the advantages are that you pick up tips. Someone else has figured out something to do about a thing that was bugging you. You can vent, and don't underestimate the value of venting. And you find out you're not alone. Dementia.org at the bottom was the source of dementia information. They have a lot of articles, including different descriptions of different types of dementia worth looking at. And around the corner is a sticker, and the sticker is there because no list is complete until you have already printed 40 copies. The Father is a movie that came out a few years ago starring Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Colman. Everything I've read, some of it really good, talks about dementia from the point of view of looking at the person with dementia. That movie, it's a drama, presents the world from inside the head of the person with dementia. It's interesting, and as much as I had read and studied and gone through, that would have given me a kind of empathy and an understanding that that I didn't get from anything else. What does it look like when you are trying to make sense of this world that doesn't make a lot of sense? That's what I have to say. Youngie and Norm are going to go on, and then at the end we should have some time for questions. And please feel free to pick up materials.
Thank you so much for providing a lot of background information. I'll probably be talking a little bit more from my own personal experience. I spent almost 25 years at Sacred Heart Medical Center working in public relations, which included really preparing a lot of patient information, as well as dealing with the media. At Sacred Heart, it seemed like it was almost every other day, and Norm visited us a number of times during some rather catastrophic events that I dealt with. Our heart fighter, our helicopter going down up in northern Washington. I got a call at 2 o'clock in the morning to tell me to get in and handle the media. So I even had a good experience with Mike Wallace from 16. He came to do an investigative report, and we greeted him with open arms, which he didn't expect. When he came to the front door, he was my height, which put things into perspective. And because we were so open and honest and provided him with the information that he needed at the end of that interview, he said, you know, Marilyn, I've never had an interview like this before. Normally people close the door, pull down the dark blinds, tell us to go away. But you let us watch bypass surgery, and you connected us with physicians, and so we really understand what is happening here, and we have no story. So that's just a little bit about my background, but in all those years of the Sacred Heart, I really didn't have any recognition of dementia, Alzheimer's, those diseases, because they really weren't talked about that much. There were a lot of articles about a lot of various medical conditions, but never about dementia or Alzheimer's, because it was not in the forefront. Unfortunately, because that's why I think we're way behind, in catching up with these diseases. So it's been a little bit of a struggle for me, because this is not my first rodeo with my husband's dementia. Within my family and circle of friends, it spans a lot of years. My dad lived with it for 7 to 8 years. My only sibling, my sister, died of the disease, had it for a shorter period of time. And now my husband, Bill, was initially diagnosed by MRI with vascular dementia. And that was in 2018, 5 years ago. He is in a care facility called CIEL, C-I-E-L. It's a memory care facility. It's about 5 minutes from my house, so I'm able to be there just about every day. And I guess what is most concerning to me is the incidence of Alzheimer's overall, because 50% of our circle of closest friends have experienced dementia. To me, that is kind of a alarming number. And along with that, there is so little we know about it. That also, I think, is very concerning. I've really been very fortunate with Bill, because he's tolerated, maybe that's not the best word, for his illness. His temperament has not changed significantly. At CIEL, where he is a resident, he is liked by all the caregivers, and several of the women at the facility would like to have him as, their boyfriend. Which is, I'm happy for him. That it tells him he still has his charm. And really the only time he is exhibiting any displeasure with what is going on is when they take him to shower, anything that involves personal attention. That can sometimes distress him. I know that may be kind of exceptional, but he has remained the kind, gentle, quiet person that he always was, and that's a blessing. And that was true for my father in his, journey with Alzheimer's, as well as my sister. Aside from adjusting to the many changes in lifestyle and not having Bill at home, and all the wonderful things we shared together, golf and a lot of travel, the other really tough part is the cost. And for him, in a care facility, that cost is $7,000 a month, which means that not only is that a lot, but it could go on for years and years, as it did with my dad. So somehow or other in this country, we're going to have to address that cost, because it can be devastating for families, and because there is so much of this disease out there. I mean, that is really a concern. I know we don't have too much time left here, but I would mention that I think it's important, if you have a loved one with Alzheimer's, that you make every effort to stay engaged with activities. You know that I'm volunteering for a number of organizations, and Bill was the kind of man who always supported me in those things that I was doing in the community. You know, he supported me when I was working at Sacred Heart sometimes, many hours, weekends. And so we enjoyed a lot of travel and golf and things together. And we had a wonderful life. I am very grateful for that. I wish that he were not in this situation. You know, my heart goes out to him because, you know, it is so sad. But are there questions, or are we going to do that at the end? Okay. Thank you.
Beautiful morning with the fall colors. This year is really splendid. I'm Hyun-ki, and this is my husband Norm. Norm was diagnosed with having Lewy body dementia over 2.5 years ago. Lewy body disease is the second most common dementia after Alzheimer's, and there are more than 1 million people with the disease in the US. According to Cleveland Clinic, Lewy body dementia happens when clumps of abnormal protein called Lewy bodies build up in your brain. They damage parts of your brain that affect cognition, behavior, movement, and sleep. Lewy body disease is progressive condition, meaning it gets worse over time. There's no cure, but medications and therapies can help manage the symptoms. Lewy body Resource Center says symptoms that distinguish Lewy body dementia from other dementias may include visual hallucinations early in the course of dementia, fluctuations of cognitive ability, attention, alertness, slowness of movement, difficulty walking, or rigidity. Also sensitivity to medications used to treat hallucinations, REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep behavior disorder, in which people physically act out their dreams, and more trouble with complex mental activities such as multitasking, problem solving, and analytical thinking than with memory. Not every Lewy body dementia patient has the same symptoms or of the same severity. Although it was not recognized at the time, one of Norm's first Lewy body dementia symptoms was loss of sense of smell almost 30 years ago. So if you have that issues, talk to your neurologist. Closely followed by occasional but unexpected lightheadedness. That was in his late 40s and early 50s. Now Norm is 76. But his cognitive and physical functions, did I say this is 76?
I think he liked 56
Yeah.
better.
I'm gonna go back to that. I am 71. Cognitive and physical functions showed no sign of impairment around that time. He was a very fit man. His only health issue was acid reflux. He enjoyed his careers as a newspaper reporter and editor and college instructor in Korea and in the US with the numerous international and domestic trips along the way. So we didn't skimp on our life. He also joined trail building groups and built trails for many years. During these years, he had annual checkups with the tests and labs, just like you must be doing. His sense of smell was still absent, but we didn't pay attention to it. His lightheadedness worsened and became more frequent. Still, our doctors gave him a clean bill of health year after year. But we knew something was very wrong. But what? Our frustration turned to resignation. When he reached his mid-60s, his verbal capability was noticeably declining. It was so sad for me to watch him struggling with words because his career was wordsmith. Depression set in. He didn't know he was depressed. I could see it. He didn't enjoy activities he used to enjoy. He didn't want to travel or go out for the evening. His world was shrinking fast. Also, frequent visual hallucinations started taking place. He started with the floor pattern moving. Then our absent daughter was sitting at the table. A small white dog we didn't have ran through the house. It's funny. But it's wrong. But we didn't know what's wrong. He knew that he was experiencing hallucinations and tried to ignore them. The thing helped him was this bank account of his words. So he was still good with the words and he was quick. Meanwhile, physical changes appeared. He lost 20 pounds in a short time, slouched and shuffled. Others started noticing the changes. People were saying, "What's wrong with him?" Do you want? They want to know, but we didn't know. But even though we knew after the diagnosis, we didn't want to share right away. We felt that somehow we were shamed by the disease, but we shouldn't feel that way. But we felt that way, so we just kind of trying to stay away from it. So this part coming out to you is a fighting part for us to share with you. So to pay attention to whatever symptoms Norm has. If you have, go talk to the doctor, because that may save you a few years. Also, others started noticing changes. Nonetheless, he ate well, slept well, except for occasional vivid dreams, and stayed active. We hiked regularly, and he took yoga classes, which was very helpful, still helpful, because he knew how to stretch things now. We enjoyed our lives despite all these distractions. During this period, my anxiety over his changes grew, and I was experiencing my own depression. Then, 2.5 years ago, in an annual optometrist's visit, Norm told the doctor about some vision changes. After checking this and that, the doctor said he would send a referral to see a neurologist. At the first appointment, the neurologist diagnosed Norm's malady as early stage Lewy body dementia. Now we have a name for the symptoms. That was shocking, but that was a relief at the same time. Now we have an enemy to fight. When you cannot fight, that's even worse. I frantically began to look for information about Lewy body dementia, and remembered reading the term Lewy body in Ken Bridgman's obituary. I emailed Hulda, and I received a flurry of priceless tips from her. She sounded like she was waiting for me for that email. In this case, I really start believing in invisible hand. Whatever you call it, it's there to trying to help you, to make you feel, to heal, help you to heal, or manage. And our anxiety immediately was reduced. Over the months that followed, Hulda introduced us to other dementia patients and various Lewy body organizations. They have provided numerous avenues for us to get familiar with the Lewy body dementia. One important benefit is learning from other caregivers and knowing that others are going through the same journey. Norm is doing better, and I am doing better. Besides taking medications for his symptoms, a multitude of vitamins and supplements, we meditate, exercise, and pursue other kinds of therapy. He calls me, I am his diet consultant, his physical therapy consultant. And he, before all this happened, diagnosis, he didn't like, me telling him, lots of men have a wife death. So he was one of them. But afterwards, his wife death has not cured completely, but it's about kind of halfway there. But by the way, I heard the man with a wife lives the longest. so don't complain about your wife's complaint. And, we count our blessings every day. That helps, and they are many. As a caregiver, I'm trying not to lose myself to Norm's Lewy body. It's so easy to feel that Lewy body is floating me down. So I try to kind of punctuate my life, my own. So I have created my own time and space to engage in my favorite activities. We really appreciate all the support and help Hulda gave us, and hope we can pass it along. Thank you. Norm has a few things to say.
Pardon me, I just want to add some materials to those that Hulda brought that may be useful for you. One is this wonderful, thick, sort of a phone book style directory published by the Fig Tree.
Oh, yeah.
And you can get this at the local libraries. And it's just called Resource Directory. This is the new one that's come out. But it's, for a caregiver, I think it could be useful to have. It is an advertising product, but it's got a lot of information. So I only got 3 or 4 extras that I will let you have a look at, and somebody can use. I'll talk just a little bit about living with Lewy body disease. One of the symptoms that I have is orthostatic hypotension. That is, orthostatic means when you stand up, and hypotension is low blood pressure. And so if in particular, if I go upstairs, or if I rise from sitting in a chair, then I get lightheaded. Another symptom is autonomic nerve system malfunction. And this is the autonomic nervous system is the system that runs your body temperature, your heart rate, and a lot of other things. And it malfunctions. And so I may be in bed and I suddenly get real warm. Maybe comparable to what a hot flash is. But it just can disturb my sleep pretty easily, and him as a result. Another thing that I have to do is to not drive. It's one of the things that Dr. Greenleaf said at the outset, that I shouldn't be driving. The reason is not just the danger of being involved in an accident, but if you are involved in an accident and then are said to be another one is word finding. The person with dementia would be blamed for an accident, whether they were at fault or not. And so, it's something to consider. I'm going to share with you a list of diagnostic symptoms. This is a list made by the Lewy Body Dementia Association. And maybe that will be useful for you. And as they say, this is not a medical diagnosis, but a sign that perhaps you should be talking to a neurologist. So I will stop there because we want to give you time for a few questions.
We can also be here for 2 minutes after, so if you have questions, we don't get to them.
Thank you, Norm.
We have some handouts over here. One is of the vitamin B deficiency could imitate your dementia, vitamin B12. And then another one was left over from Dr. Greeley from last week. So they are here, and so help yourself. Thank you.
FYI, the Fig Tree Resource Directory is available online. So you can, and it actually is easier to search online than it is to flip through that big old catalog. So.
Thank you, Dave.
Is there anything we can do to avoid some of the things we've learned about today?
I think they generally, what makes you healthy, exercise, good diet, good sleep, etc. Good relationships, stimulating your brain with all sorts of those kinds
That
of
will all
things.
slow it down,
Yeah.
but it's not gonna take it away.
My parents loved Jeopardy. They would watch that, and that seemed to help.
Yeah, it's not curable. At this point, they're beginning to come out with medications that seem to slow it. They're still not cures, but something will get us all in the end. And so after a while, you start thinking about some time and quality and so forth, rather than a magic cure. And right now, that's where it is. But you can make your life better in the time that you have by understanding where you are, what resources are available, and being as smart as you can about it. It does help. So don't put your head in the sand.
I hate to say this, but whatever calories you take, trying to consume them by physical activities. Don't let the calories stay on in your, and then apparently too much calorie, that now we are such an affluent society, we eat a lot more than we consume. So trying to eat, be active, And even getting up after a meal instead of sitting watching TV, apparently, which I do, which apparently that takes a few calories off you.
Anybody else? Thanks for being here.
Thank you.